Hello, everyone, and welcome into the Grip Block preview for the Idlewild Open. You may have already noticed that there's no...
I'm sorry, Hunter. The LWS Idlewild Open? I can't even get through
English is hard, huh?
Yeah, is it still that?
Yeah, it's still LWS.
Okay.
I was just going to inform them.
Or because it's actually the LWS Open at Idlewild.
Maybe.
I think.
I like just calling it Idlewild.
But that's not fair to LWS. They pay all that money.
Not to us.
Well, in a roundabout way.
No, it's not in a roundabout way.
Well, we all win, right?
A rising tide floats all boats.
Yeah, that's what I like to say.
So when does that payment come?
I actually don't know if it's...
it is still LWS.
Yeah, this is not Idlewild, guys. This is the LWS Open. Yeah, that's a minor
I just
detail.
pick one word out of the...
LWS.
Okay, and I'll call it 2024.
There you go. Welcome to the 2024.
Silas isn't here, so there's no sick graphics.
And no
I
shot
apologize.
callers. That's why I went on that tangent.
But Idlewild this year, same course as last year, basically, according to the caddy book. There's no significant difference in the overall layout. I noticed one small OB addition, but I don't think that's going to affect how the course plays at all. So pretty much you can expect what we always expect out here. I will say each year we come back to Idlewild and I look at the caddy book again, the course feels easier every year I see it. I think because the courses on tour are just getting so much harder and requiring so much more out of players that we get here. And like this kind of feels like what used to be like, man, Idlewild's kind of a challenging course. Now feels like this is going to be kind of a free-for-all, like let's go low.
Yeah, it's very scoreable. I think the kicker with Idlewild and what still makes it tricky from time to time, because, last year, we saw players like Ricky Wysocki, almost 10 strokes off the pace. Like, it can still get to people, and I think anytime you have a 3-round event, there's a sense of urgency. And a lot of this course, the identity is short and technical relative to what we see on the Pro Tour especially. And so a lot of the par 4s, if you execute your tee shot, you're throwing putters in, chip shot, forehands in. I mean, it comes right out the gate, hole 1. You throw a good drive, you can be jump putting up there. But the course has just enough tight gaps and interesting angles and things like that. Hole 1, it just uses really the slope of the hill as most of the defense. And it also, I think, fosters enough creativity amongst players. Kevin Jones will throw grenades out there sometimes, things like that. That I think it can be one of those rounds where you get 7 holes in and you're like, oh, I haven't really got scoring yet. Like it can be, there's as much as there's a lot of easy holes, there's not a lot of freebies. There's not a lot of just chuck it out there and then throw your upshot. Because some of the open holes, if you throw far enough, they do kind of become freebies. Because it's like throw a hyzer. They just have to be far. On these shorter technical holes, yes, they're going to be easier and more accessible to a lot of the field. But if you mess up your tee shot, you're just no longer making birdie. So it can add up. And I think that if you don't get out the gates hot, because I do think, across 3 rounds, I think the winning score will come out, 30 under or better.
Definitely.
So if you don't come out hot, I think you're in trouble. In a 3-round tournament, you don't have time to have a bad round. But I think some guys, that'll get into their head a little bit. They might start slow and then dig themselves into a bigger hole trying to get going.
Yeah. Now, one thing that sometimes will defend Idlewild is the wind.
Yeah.
This weekend, that doesn't look like it's going to be the case. Actually, weather looks incredible out there.
No wind last year, really, either.
Yeah. It looks like the weather's going to be great. Sunny. It looks like there's going to be some gusts. I believe it was on either Friday or Saturday, but only one day of like somewhat windy day. And even at that, it's not crazy windy compared to what you could see out there. So seems very scoreable. I believe the winning score last year was 32 under. I would imagine you need to at least match that pace, maybe push it a little bit more to like 34 under to take down the win this year. The person who got to that score last year and took it down was Ganon Burr. He's the defending champion and is coming in off of a very dominant performance at Ledgestone last weekend and really just a very dominant season so far. I think it's definitely safe to say he's the favorite this weekend. What do you think it would take for him not to win?
Honestly, it's just it's probably going to take somebody to really push him, and have a dominant performance because, his game is really good everywhere right now. He's on such a hot streak, and he's been a player this year that doesn't have those fall off weeks. A lot of guys kind of have that, after a win or after a really good run of tournaments, they kind of drop off a little bit. Gannon, clearly that has not been that guy considering his worst finish is like 13th. But I think the one thing he has going against him this week is like I said, I think this course is accessible to a large portion of the field. That didn't seem to matter much last year. One thing you will notice if you watch him last year is his putting was really good. It was really on, making a lot of circle two putts. You look back to Isaac Robinson a few years back when he won. What was he on with? The circle two putting. I think that is a very consistent theme. So I think for Ganon, if his circle two putt is working, he's not going to have any trouble out here. He'll probably get another win, and right now he just seems unstoppable. But other players will certainly have an opportunity to push him. It's going to be, you're going to have to take your chances every time you get them, though. He's not going to let anybody squeak away with one.
Yeah, no, I think what you said earlier when we were talking about the course preview is really going to be Ganon's biggest tell here, and that's round one. Because Ganon, we've always talked about this, where like he is a momentum player. He likes playing from the front of the tee. He likes being like in contention. If he's not in contention, he'll sometimes can lose focus. Those are his own words.
Yeah.
So I think with this course being one where like you can't really hide a okay round, you need to have solid rounds all three. I do think that how he starts, that opening stretch, that front nine of round one, and realistically all of round one, I think that's going to be very crucial for him. But you're right, it brings in so many more people playing a course like this to where it's going to play well to a lot of people's strengths. I don't think there's really a player that's going out there that feels like they can't score on this course. And so it does bring in a different part of the field, but Eureka Temp is similar in that most players feel they can score. It just plays harder because how much OB is out of Eureka Temp. So it'll be very interesting to see.
I think one thing to note about Ganon, too, is you mentioned, like he can sometimes lack focus early on until things really start to pick up, but he'll be on feature card, and as a defending champion, he's going to be on the feature card. And right now, he's just going to be the favorite for one of the first two cards at every event he walks into, and I think that's a huge, huge bonus. When you're playing in those later tee times, you're playing with the best players in the world at the moment. It kind of sets the tone early.
Well, you also have the gallery round one.
The galleries, it gets you in that mode of focus. I think it'd be one thing if you're teeing off at 10 in the morning with just a bunch of random guys. It's hard to get into that mode. But when the scene is set very similar to how it will be later on in the weekend from the get-go, that kind of snaps him into focus, I think.
That makes a lot of sense. Now, Ricky Wysocki was building some serious momentum over in Europe, but then took a week off due to a minor injury. Yeah. All signs seem to point that he's back at 100%, according to his Instagram, and ready to play this weekend as he looks to maintain that momentum heading into Worlds. Interesting thing I learned today, though, that I just have to remind myself every year, he's yet to win out here at Idlewild. It definitely feels like one he would have taken down. Do you think this is the year, and how important is it for him to continue building that momentum as he heads into Worlds?
Yeah, I think this event for Ricky is less important. It's less important how he performs at this event and more important how he feels at this event. Whatever he's claiming on Instagram, you can always re-aggravate injuries, and I think, going into Worlds, you look back a few weeks and it was like, okay, Ricky has built up such a full head of momentum right now that he looks great to tackle this next major and hopefully finally end that major slump. Having that question mark of that injury is not something you want to have, and I think for him, if he really is at 100% and he really is, the injury is not a factor any longer, I think he has a great chance to win out here. I wouldn't say he's the favorite, but he has a great shot. But I think if he can come out of the tournament feeling like he still feels 100% and his game is still in a decent spot, that's really all he needs to do, I think, to walk into Worlds with the right mentality and really be prepared for that.
Yeah, I feel like for me, I think Ricky really needs a top 5. I don't think he needs a win. I mean, obviously he would love to have another win, but I don't think he needs a win when we're considering Worlds, in, 2 weeks from now. Mm-hmm. I don't think he necessarily needs a win to continue that momentum, but I think a top 5 where it's a very solid finish, it's something where it proved to himself, my game's just fine, because top 5 isn't what it used to be. A top 5 means you played great out there. Sometimes it just means you played incredible. It just wasn't your weekend. It was someone else's weekend. So I feel like a top 5 finish here keeps that momentum he had built at Europe. Yeah. It squashes any of, whether it's in his head or in people's heads watching him, any doubt about his injury and whether it's more serious than he might think. But all signs point to he seems on Instagram very confident, I'm back, I'm ready to go. So I think a top 5 or just somewhere up in there. If he's outside the top 10, I think it could possibly like make him question himself a little bit with how much momentum he had built, and and that could do one of two things. It could make him question and then really lock in for Worlds, or it could make him question and shake his confidence a little bit. Yeah. A top 5, I feel like, guarantees he's going to be confident and maintain that momentum heading into Worlds. So I think that's kind of an important thing for Ricky here. Now, Calvin Heimburg came in second last year, also has not won out here. That also surprises me because I feel like this course really should play well to Calvin's game in a lot of areas. What do you think he needs to do or change to really lock in and try to take this one down?
I don't. He's been having kind of a really weird season. He had kind of this rough patch. He played well at Ledgestone, top 3. But I think that hopefully that Ledgestone event was him kind of finding his footing again, and he can rev up for Worlds as well. But yeah, he's been a little bit more unpredictable than in recent times. And I think, even last year we started to see that trend in a little bit more. I think it's really hard to stay at the kind of level that he was playing at, where he just was never outside the top 3. We're seeing that out of Ganon right now. And I think it's very hard to stay there. And I think it's really hard because once you do start to slip a little bit, it's you have this standard that's so high, and now you're not playing up to it. And even if you are playing okay and you're taking top 20s, top 15s, top 10s, it's not the impossible standard you had set for yourself. And I think that can kind of give a player a bit of an identity crisis and be a weird adjustment. So I think a lot of Calvin's fights this year are probably just going to be in his own head, just trying to remember that he is still capable of winning, and even though he might not be finishing top 3 every single event, that doesn't really matter. Because I feel like his game, it kind of reminds me of Paul Macbeth's games, where I right now where I can't necessarily point out specific problems where I'm like, ooh, that one part is really bad. It just looks a little unpolished and not quite put together completely. Just more unforced errors than normal. That's really what it comes down to.
Yeah, I think when I think about Calvin, I think his game lines up for this course very well, but I think that you hit on it again earlier. When you think back through a lot of winners and what kind of got them there, it is the putting. Mm-hmm. I mean, even you think Andrew Marweed has performed well out here. He hasn't won it, but he performed well. Known for putting. He's statistically one of the best putters in the world. Isaac Robinson when he won. Chris Dickerson's done well out here.
You're going to give yourself looks.
And you got to convert as many as possible. And typically when we look at Calvin, when he does struggle, like last season, even when he slipped up, it was on the putting green a lot of times is where that slip came. So I'm feeling like that might be where he really just has to, why that hasn't switched over to him have this win here is just there's players that out-putt him because everyone's giving themselves looks, players out-putt him. So I think he's in a similar boat as Ricky. I think this is an important weekend just to, whatever he found at Ledgestone, build on that, right? Just have another solid performance out here. I don't think this is a must-win by any means. I think it's just something where he needs to have a solid performance. He needs to get up into that top 10 so he can have confidence because at Worlds, I really, really like his game for Worlds. And obviously he's hunting down his first major ever still. So I think it is very important this weekend, really just to be looking ahead and make sure this is almost let's check all the boxes, make sure our game feels good as we head into a major.
Yeah, I mean, Worlds is going to be so big for him. I mean, you think about Calvin, I'm not sure if he's turned 28 yet, but he is getting up in his 20s and still yet to win a major. And that's just it is crazy to think. You look at somebody like a Ganon or even an Eagle who was able to win majors pretty early in their career. A lot of the greats have done that. And Calvin, at this point, is for sure the greatest player of all time to never win a major, for sure. I can't think of anybody else you could argue for that. And it's just crazy to think that we're gonna, the longer this goes, we might start approaching age 30 and him still not won a major. He really needs to get it done. So yeah, I mean, I think there's gonna be a lot of players that are really feeling the best thing they can walk away from this, because only one player can win, but everybody can walk away with, did I throw the disc well? How's my game feeling as I head into Worlds? Because that's going to be, everybody that's playing here might have a little less practice. Some of the people showing up early that are already here in town, but it's an important warm-up. Yeah.
Now, one other player that's on my radar this weekend is Kyle Klein. This was his first Elite Series win back in 2021, and he's consistently performed very solid out here. He also recently has been kind of building some momentum as well. Do you think that he's the most likely player to take Ganon down this weekend?
Most likely, no. Well, I'll get to that in a bit, but I do think, yeah, Kyle's an interesting one. Just really under the radar guy, but such a good disc golfer. I feel like these courses on this swing of the tour do kind of make more sense for me for him to win. But yeah, I think Kyle's going to be a serious threat at Worlds this year. And once again, he's going to be the defending U.S. champ. So I think this whole latter half of the season is really going to favor him. I hope he can pick up a few wins because I think he's having a really solid season, but it's just been overshadowed by a lot of other players. So, yeah, I like him at this event. It's just he's a difficult one to pick out. He's one of those guys, and there's quite a few of them on tour that we talk about that are not ones that always just flash on your radar when you hear about a certain course. It's one thing if maybe he had won the event last year, but just in any normal spread of courses we look at, you don't normally go, oh, Kyle Klein, like that's the guy for this one. But yeah, he will certainly play. He certainly can play well at this venue.
Yeah, I feel like his game, which is true for most disc golfers, I feel like it can be streaky at times, and I feel like if this is a weekend his putts on, he's definitely one that could be vying for the championship.
Yeah, he's not always a lethal putter, but when it's on, it's very good. I mean, probably 50% of the guys who even have a chance of winning, you can just say that about.
Yeah, exactly.
Are they putting well? Because if they are, they're going to be. I mean, Simon Lizotte would win every other week if his putt was always at its best.
Very true. But I really like Kyle. I think he's going to have a very solid performance out here this weekend. I think that all signs point towards that. And I do think he has a very solid chance of taking down Ganon, but I think it's going to be more about his putt and Ganon's putt and who's just put in the basket more. I think they're both going to give themselves a lot of opportunities. It's just who's converting them more.
You get a lot of chances for scary putts on this course as well. Facing OB,
you have a lot of birdies
slopes
that can turn to bogeys.
Yeah, so that's another thing too is like, you know, you got to be willing to throw the gutsy putt and make it. And sometimes the first one of your day can really decide how the rest of the day is going to go. Do you make it dead center and all of a sudden the basket doesn't look so scary anymore, or do you miss it wide and roll out of bounds?
Yeah, the final two guys I want to talk through here are the Robinson brothers.
Yeah,
Isaac up to this point in the season hasn't really lived up to my expectations that I had on him coming into the season, whereas Ezra has exceeded my expectations I had on him coming into the season so far. Both feel like they could do very well at this course. What do you expect from them, and which brother are you favoring more right now?
Definitely Isaac. I think Isaac, slow start, but these last few months, I think he's been probably close to a top 3 player, but definitely a top 5 player these last few months. He's been putting together a lot of good finishes, but he's only really gotten himself in the mix to win a couple of times. And being a defending champion in this event, I think this is a big one for him. I kind of see this probably as his best chance to win on tour this year. So I really like him at this event. But Ezra has been good all year. He's been sneaky, but also not necessarily has been a guy that like coming down the stretch is in winning time. So would not be shocked to see one of those two get in that position, but I have to favor Isaac a little bit.
Yeah, I'm actually flipping it. I'm going Ezra simply because this event historically has been a breakout event for a lot of players. This has been several players like this is their first win on tour, or this was their first time they really got in the mix, and I feel like that could be this weekend for Ezra Robinson. He's had a very solid season. He's had a few blemishes here and there, but a lot of weeks he is beating his brother, and he's also getting just in the mix a lot higher than you think. You kind of just don't really hear his name much all weekend, and then you look at this leaderboard and you're like, how did he get there?
Vibe this year.
Yeah. So I really feel like this could be one of those weekends where this is the start of Ezra's storyline, like it was the start of Kyle's storyline back in the day and many other players. So I definitely think, because I think Kevin Jones was a similar way. Chris Dickerson was
Talk
here.
About another guy to look out for coming off of a hot event last week, Kevin Jones.
Yeah.
Played pretty well until the last round last year, and he has he's picking up a little steam right now.
He has some great history at this. I don't think he's won this event, if my memory serves me right, but he's one of the players that I think of when I think of Idlewild. I'm like, oh yeah, Kevin Jones has gotten in the mix there.
This isn't like his win. Doesn't he have like a win?
I don't think this is his win.
Maybe it's Preserve that he won. I don't know.
Preserve feels more right to me, but I like Ezra. I really like Ezra this weekend. I think this could be a weekend, like I said, where this is like the start of whether this is his first win or this is the time where he's battling with Ganon or Kyle or someone down the stretch, and we're like, wow, okay, he can go toe-to-toe. Kevin Jones did win Idlewild. There you go.
He did win Idlewild back in 2019.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that was his first. He's won Idlewild and GMC.
Now, FPO, we're still looking at a pretty somewhat fractured field with a lot of the Europeans missing, but Owen Scoggins came in second last year to Valerie Mandujano.
I remembered him holding up the propeller. That's
why.
Yeah.
Last year to Valerie Mandujano, who appears to be missing this year's event due to a shoulder injury. Do you think that Owen is going to be able to capitalize on the wounded field here and get this win?
Yeah, I think I like her probably the most of this because this does seem like a course that she can really dice up. You get these like tight lines and off the tee, and you'll see a lot of FPO players struggle with this type of course where they're forced to hit a line very early off the tee. Realistically, you see all the fields struggle with that, but the FPO field is smaller, so you just notice it more. But being a forehand dominant player and you're looking at the gaps and distance isn't a huge factor, so you're not really worried about. You're just worried about getting off the tee, really. And also because she's a great putter, she can make up for some of that distance on the green as well. So yeah, I like Own a lot at this event. I think she, to me, is the clear favorite.
Yeah, I fully agree because like we talked about it all during MPO, right? Whoever's capitalizing on the most chances is going to win. I think that this translates similar to FPO, where a lot of the FPO field is going to give themselves looks, and Owen Scoggins typically, circle 2, circle 1 is the player that converts on the most of those looks.
Yeah.
You convert on the most of the looks, you win the tournament. So I really like Owen Scoggins out here. But one player that she does have to look out for is Holland Handley, who finished right behind her last year and is coming in right off of a win from Ledgestone. How do you think she's going to react the next weekend after a big win at Ledgestone?
I think Holland, I'm not really – she's been more consistent this year, and I think she's still in an upwards trend, but I'm not really looking at her as like a week-to-week consistent player, especially when a course doesn't necessarily fit her MO. And I think this course probably isn't quite playing to her strengths. So I am at the point now where I'm definitely not going to write her off at any particular place, especially in a wounded field. Like I feel like Holland can still compete and be just fine out here, but I think we're going to get a bigger influx from that middle pack that we don't normally see in this event. We saw Val win by 6 shots last year. I think there's a chance that there's a very good chance that somebody in that top 3 looks a little bit out of place. So I think that kind of bumps Holland out, in my opinion.
Interesting. Yeah, I feel like everything you said's true, but I feel that way towards Missy Gannon, not Holland Handley this weekend. Mainly because I think Holland's been very consistent, especially as of recent. And with the win, I do feel like she's going to be the type of player that when she has a win and she's immediately going into another course that she has good history at, like she is here, that's going to be something where she just has oozing confidence on that first tee. And I think that's going to be very important for her. And so I think that really she's another player where when her putter's on, it's on. And for her to win at Ledgestone, her putter was on most of the weekend. So I think that's probably going to roll into this weekend. I think she's going to have a very successful week here. And I do think it's important for her if she even wants a chance at Worlds, which the courses will play well for Holland at Worlds. If she wants a chance, she needs another good weekend here to keep that confidence going into facing Kristen, Hannah, all of them.
I will say, and I don't know that this is true, I'm just kind of snowballing or spitballing. If I were to win at Ledgestone, I think there's a part of me that would just, no matter what, not play the next event if there's just one before Worlds.
To keep your momentum.
And just carry that win.
Yeah.
In. I don't know. And, I'm sure most players probably don't care about that. It's like, it is what it is. It's a chance for them to, especially in FPO, and if you're one of those top players, it's a few $1,000 almost guaranteed.
Well, that's the hard part here is it's one of your best shots at a win because during this stretch, you don't have Kristen.
Yeah.
Which Kristen, she's
been
missing a lot.
If I were in Holland shoes, I certainly would not skip. But maybe if you're one of the upper echelon MPO players who doesn't need a few $1,000, maybe. If you win that Ledgestone, maybe you're thinking, yeah. And Gannon's never been that guy.
No.
He's always like, I'll play every event and win them all. But I think there are a lot of players who'd probably win that and be like, yeah, let's just take that in the world. Let's go start practicing.
Yeah. Now, Missy Gannon, I just mentioned her. She didn't have the weekend she would have wanted last weekend, but the course should fit her game pretty well. How important do you think it is for her to bounce back as she's looking towards the next major?
Yeah, I think she does need something good going this weekend because I feel like she's kind of slowing down right now. I don't know. I don't. Missy has been a great FPO player for years now, but going into Worlds, and I know she already took down a major earlier this year, but going into Worlds, I just don't really love her at that setup of courses. I don't really love her over 5 rounds either. So I think. Yeah, I think this would be a great chance for her to, get a win and mark this kind of part of the season as a positive because I don't really love her going into Worlds. But I feel like Missy's game should work just fine as long as her putter is working. She is very dependent on that. Her putting is some players you can describe them as they're fine inside of C1X. They're streaky in C2, and that's kind of their difference maker. For Missy, she's streaky in C1X. Some weeks she's up around 90%. Other times she slips down towards 70, high 60s. So I think for her, she's going to have a really good putting performance. But I do think that she has, when she's throwing well, she has a pretty good controllable backhand game, and that you don't have to have a forehand to win this tournament. We've seen Isaac win it, and so on. So I think if her backhand is working out and she can throw just controllable backhands across this course, she'll have a chance. But she's going to have to, it's the toughest thing for Missy for me is I think she needs other players to play bad, because I don't see a part of her game. It's like that's where she's going to grab something on the opponents. Own it's like she's going to get the advantage with her putting. And to be fair, I think Kristen is kind of just a better version of that. Like, I don't know that Kristen has one part of her game that is so good, but I think she's a little more well-rounded than Missy. I think Missy is well-rounded, but she can't afford to have one part of her game failing.
That makes a lot of sense, yeah. I don't really have anything to add to that. So any other players in the FPO field that you have your eyes on coming into this weekend?
I'll get to that in a second.
Okay.
My predictions.
Yeah, I mean, the ones that came to my mind, I'm looking at, I haven't checked if all these players are out there, but it wouldn't surprise me to see a Kat Murch, Sayananda, Emily Weatherman.
Yeah, I've been waiting for the Kat Murch show, haven't we?
Yeah, Haley King. It wouldn't surprise me to see one of those players
I'm not sure if Haley's playing.
Perform well.
I think Haley might not be playing.
Those were all off the dome. I didn't check on those. They're not in my picks.
A bunch of them were. I don't think Haley is.
Now, point standings heading into this week. Big week for me last week. I've cut into the lead. It's only a 6-point lead for Trevor now. He's at 93. I'm at 87 coming into this week.
I can't wait to just lay down the most vanilla Worlds predictions you've ever seen.
Nah, I'm going big. I'm going balls to the wall for Worlds. All right, I'll kick it off with my MPO. I'm taking Kyle Klein in third. Really like him there. I'm going all in with Ezra Robinson. Ezra Robinson's my new Chris Dickerson. I'm taking Ezra Robinson second and Ganon Burr to win because I feel like where we're at right now, you're pretty dumb not to put Ganon Burr, at least in your top three, probably winning.
Yeah, you're playing the percentages for sure. Well, I'm going to take your old Chris Dickerson
nice.
Third. I do like him at this style, of course, to me. And he didn't play great at this event last year, but the year before, I think he was runner-up. But, I mean, this course screams Chris Dickerson.
It does.
And he's been playing solid, so I've got him in third. I'm going to take Ganon in second because I am going to give Isaac first.
Okay. Different Robinson bros in top three.
Yeah, it's a going with the gut thing big time here, but I really do feel like he's going to at least be top three, and it wouldn't shock me to see if this is where he's going to make his mark this season. So, yeah, we got some points to shift around here, and I think we're going to have another one here on that.
Now, in FPO, I'm riding with the tried and true, going Holland third, Missy second, Own first.
So you're still keeping Missy in there.
I'm keeping Missy in there because I don't...
In second. Man, I feel like you were...
I copy and pasted from last week. I was just like, I looked at my picks and I was like, you know what? I like that.
I feel like everything you just said kind of led me to believe you were going to kick Missy out and throw Own up to second.
Own's in first.
Or Holland, rather.
Yeah, no, I looked at my picks from last week and I was like, you know what, Hunter? I like that.
All right,
let's ride with it.
I took Missy in third. I actually threw Emily Weatherman in second because I think that there's going to be one of those players. I think it could be Kat Murch, but Emily Weatherman, I like her at a course that doesn't require a lot of distance. So I think I like her in second, and then I have Own winning because I really, really feel like that's going to be the case.
Most likely. Now, who do you have for your dark horse?
Bradley Williams, Officer Bradley.
He does look like a police officer right now.
Yeah, the mustache. Listen, and I will never ever criticize a man for
Absolutely
going for
not.
the stash because it's awesome. But I'll just say this: he looks way different. Like I was like, who is that man?
Yeah. B. Will. I'm taking Matt Bell, the spinster. I was looking back, and the guy just kind of lives in the top 20 out here. And with the new format of the dark horse, top 20 is great.
It's true. Yeah.
A lot of times 50th is winning. So I like Matt Bell out here.
For sure.
So that's going to wrap it up. Be sure to tune in and watch IDLEWIL all weekend long, and then we'll be back on Monday to break down all the storylines and everything that happened at the event. We'll talk to you then.